thanks for watching. Today we want to talk to you about the retirement decision. Now keep in mind this is certainly not an endorsement to retire early, let alone retire at all. And if you're even thinking seriously about this topic, you should probably consult with your spouse or loved one to make sure it's even permissible. But before we get started, let's jump into these topics and talk in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, we hear that question a lot, but unfortunately we don't think an answer will ever be simple, easy, or straightforward. I mean, our observation is that there's so many variables for you to consider. For example, we could take health, family, taxes will change, interest rates, the stock market returns will be variable as well. But importantly, your goals, objectives, and risk tolerance will not be the same as anybody else. So you can take some rules of thumbs, but you really got to think about it yourself. And in our opinion, the only ones that can make that decision will be yourself. But hopefully we can provide some good information here in this video or through our newsletters, and hopefully by meeting with you.
Well, probably the first step is to get started well in advance of retirement. Let's go to our blackboard and talk about some of these topics.
Okay, now when getting started with the retirement decision well in advance, one of the things we think you should seriously do is read your benefits and understand the choices within your plan. There's a lot to it here, but it really is important to take the time and check that out. Make sure you're familiar with the options and what you want to do and how they can benefit you. Also, and for ExxonMobil employees over 50, there's a 2-day pre-retirement workshop that's real good. That's hosted by an independent party that goes through a lot of information and material, really provides some of the foundation for many of the things you're going to be thinking about. Also, you might want to consider working with an advisor who works with people like you in your situation many years in advance. And last but not least, ask your friends and coworkers, not just those working with you today, but those who have retired in years before. Ask about the good but the bad, because there's both, and look for honest opinions from a few different folks. Okay, so when you're planning ahead, it really gives you the freedom to do a few things, such as to increase your savings. You might look at where you're at now, where you want to go, and find you need to contribute a little bit more. Of course, you also might think or find out that you're saving enough. It's just that you want to change where it's going to build up a little of the after-tax paid balance. In conjunction with that, they offer typically a special contribution notice sometime during the year that allows you to take outside assets and add to that as a special contribution to the after-tax account. That might be helpful for you as well. And of course, there's the DDA diversification announcement. Typically in the earlier part of the year, we often see it, but those of you over 55, it's permissible to take a certain percentage of your assets away from that savings plan without paying taxes if you do a rollover. I think the idea being that they call it a diversification plan was to allow you to do it yourself or to establish a relationship with another advisor and choose or invest in things that are outside the current scope of your plan. And of course, the new addition this year was the Roth availability. A couple different ways you can attack that, but that's a nice little tool. It adds a withdrawal strategy dimension that might be helpful to people later on. It might be something that some people really want to embrace now, and some it's too late. It just depends on your situation. But take a look at all of these and think about how they can work best in your situation to help you get where you want to go.
A very important decision you'll have to make will be your withdrawal rate. Now, with all things being equal, the lower the withdrawal rate, obviously the lower you're taking out from your principal. And there have been some studies based on certain circumstances in the past that suggest a good beginning rate may be 3 to 5%. Of course, even with this low withdrawal rate, there are no guarantees out there. So you probably heard or read that past results are not indicative of future performance, and you need to keep that in mind with these studies as well. Although with all that being said, we still think you're unique, you require flexibility. These studies can be used to help you learn about the retirement decision. Because of the inputs in there, the withdrawal rate, the inflation rate, bond interest rates, and stock market volatility are very important in this. And so you can go out there and Google retirement withdrawal rates and pull up a few of those studies and read through that to become familiar with it.
I think that's a good idea, and you mentioned flexibility, and We're not talking about your yoga or calisthenics, we're talking about financial flexibility and to try to help you navigate through the unforecastable storms or market events that are going to happen in the future. So let's take a little bit of a look at the blackboard and a little more detail.
Okay, now James already talked about the importance of that low withdrawal rate, but we also want to talk about not having all your eggs in one basket. It's simply hard to manage risk if everything's in one area, and it's too late after the fact. If you were a BP employee or retiree with all your eggs there, the stock dropped significantly and they cut the dividend, it's really tough to do much after the fact. Of course, the flexibility we keep talking can be applied to debt. Keeping a low or a real modest amount of debt or planning to do so might bode well for you in the future. The same with Social Security. That can be used in conjunction with your withdrawal or used to reduce your withdrawal, and especially if longevity is one of your primary considerations. And the retirement transition period is also something that's changing from our perspective. We're seeing a lot of people make contacts, so future employment's possibly necessary. A lot of times people have this, quote, retirement transition period occurring where they plan already to work part-time or consult or just some modified version of the traditional full-time, lifelong employee that's lined up already after retirement. Of course, in the same vein, many others just simply choose to work longer. But either way, look at these topics and think about them. I think each one bears a lot of consideration long before you actually get to the retirement stage.
Quality health care is a reason that some people wait to retire until age 65. Of course, that might be easier for ExxonMobil retirees because they can keep their health benefits if they retire as annuitant. But if you can accept the premise that life changes and there are some circumstances that you just can't foresee in the future, you start to ask yourself the question, what happens if my medical benefits get changed, get reduced somewhere in the future? What happens if Social Security gets cut, reduced, delayed, or some changes happen to Medicare over the future? Even though you may not think that's plausible, we think it's important to realize that there are some things that are beyond our control. And with that being said, we know that reality is we have to go out there and deal with them as they occur, even though we don't know what they are prior to that retirement decision.
But yeah, there's so many moving parts and pieces, and we didn't even really talk about your individual tax situation here today, your health situation, or the randomness of market events or market returns in the future. So, it kind of reminds me really of making a gumbo. Sometimes a little extra seasoning, too much cayenne changes it. My kids don't like it. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you just never know when it's better than others, but it reminds me of the market, what was reasonable 50 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even as little as 5 years ago, may not be reasonable today. And so we're probably going to have to think for ourselves and not put anything on autopilot going forward.
Yeah, I can see how that cayenne pepper could be tricky for a Midwesterner.
But
we hope that we gave you some good food for thought here on a retirement decision. And we appreciate you watching. We remain available if you have any questions. Till then, take care and be well.